Greetings. I am delighted to speak to you today on gender equity, disability and social inclusion, or GEDSI for short. This presentation will introduce key GEDSI concepts so we all start from a common understanding of GEDSI as we will later delve deeper into its considerations and implications for climate change. The training objectives include participants have an increased understanding of key GEDSI concepts and their relevance to climate change. Participants are also able to make the linkages between GEDSI, climate change, and selected key climate-sensitive sectors. Is organized in 3 parts. The first part looks at what is GEDSI and what concepts and terms are associated with it. The second part focuses on GEDSI considerations and why they are important. And the final part focuses on GEDSI dimensions of climate change. This section is focused on getting familiar with gender and key gender and social inclusion concepts. We will explore the difference between equity and equality and how this relates to the access to and control over resources and resilience. Before we proceed, let's get on the same page with regards to what we mean when we say gender. Understanding GEDSI requires us to dissect the key concepts of G, E, D, S, I, and bring them together in a full view of what is meant by inclusion. At birth, the difference between boys and girls is their sex. As they grow up, society gives them different roles, attributes, opportunities, privileges, and rights that in the end create the social differences between women and men. Sex refers to the biological and physiological differences between women and men which exist for reproductive purposes. Sex is what you can think of as characteristics we are born with that are natural, with no variation from culture to culture or time to time, and cannot be changed except via medical treatment. Gender can be defined as socially constructed and culturally defined roles, responsibilities, attitudes, and behaviors of women and men. What society believes women and men and girls and boys can or should do, and what they consider to be feminine and masculine. Understanding this difference and recognizing our diversities is important to understanding GEDSI. These differences need to be considered so everyone in our community is able to make choices about their safety, livelihood options, and climate adaptation measures. Differences between genders exist at multiple levels, including roles and responsibilities. Men and women have different roles and responsibilities assigned to them or expected of them, which can influence their vulnerability as well as their capacity to cope with and adapt to climate change and development interventions. Access to and management of strategic resources, the ability to access and manage information, training, land, finance, technologies, social networks, and support, and other strategic resources necessary for well-being and long-term resilience varies between men and women. Participation and decision-making. Men and women may not have the same opportunities when it comes to economic and social participation and political representation. This is the same for other marginalized groups like those with disabilities and diverse identities. Let's take a look at equality and equity. Have a look at these 2 pictures. Which of these 2 pictures demonstrates a fair situation? What is the difference between equity and equality? equality. Gender equality or equality between women and men refers to the equal enjoyment by women and girls, boys and men of rights, opportunities, resources, and rewards. Equality does not mean women and men are the same or that they must become the same. It means the enjoyment of rights, opportunities, and life changes are not governed or limited by whether they were born male or female. Gender equity is the process of being fair to women and men. To ensure fairness, strategies and measures must often be available to compensate for women's historical and social disadvantages that prevent women and men from otherwise operating on a level playing field. Gender equity recognizes that every person is unique and that women and men have different needs, priorities, challenges, and may not necessarily have what they need to enjoy their rights. Disability inclusion requires special focus on the removal of physical, environmental, attitudinal, and institutional barriers that can prevent people from participating fully in economic, social, political, and cultural life. Those living with disabilities in our communities are some of the most marginalized and face numerous barriers, including when it comes to contributing to addressing climate change. Their vulnerability to disasters and extreme weather is often made worse by barriers to receiving emergency information in an accessible format and to accessing means of transport, shelter, and relief. Social inclusion. Social inclusion is best understood through understanding exclusion, when people are excluded or left out. Social inclusion affects individuals who cannot participate in a development process or benefit from it because their identity and the informal rules related to identity deny them the right to participate. Thus, they become marginalized. Being marginalized is the same as being socially excluded. Social exclusion is a multiple dimensional issue that extends beyond poverty and lack of financial resources to participate fully in economic, social, political, and cultural life. Factors that have been grounds for social inclusion over time include discrimination on the basis of age, sex, ability or disability, race, ethnicity, religion, migration status, socioeconomic status, place of residence, sexual orientation, and gender identity. A key factor of inclusion and understanding exclusion is intersectionality. Our social identities are not limited to just one facet like gender, race, socioeconomic background, religion, or age. Instead, all these factors interact in a complex web with numerous intersections. These intersections are what shapes a person's experience of the world. It is important that we recognize these overlapping and intersecting identities and that everyone has their own unique experiences of marginalization and oppression in order to be truly inclusive. Bring all these key concepts together, the gender, equity, disability, and social inclusion, JETSI. It can be seen as a concept that addresses unequal power relations experienced by people on the grounds of gender, wealth, ability, location, ethnicity, language, and agency, or a combination of these dimensions. It focuses on the need for action to rebalance these power relations, reduce disparities, and ensure equal rights, opportunities, and respect for all. Now we move to the second section of this presentation, we ask ourselves why JETSI considerations are important. JETSI is important because climate change impacts are not gender, disability, or socially neutral. Increases in extreme weather conditions, deterioration of the environment, and biodiversity all heightens risk to communities. Vulnerable and less empowered people, those who are marginalized in our society, have additional vulnerabilities during extreme weather and emergency situations. JETSI is key to achieving sustainable development goals and economic development for all. JETSI terminology and language can vary across projects, policies, and planning, and this can be confusing. Project staff are in a very important position to ensure JETSI is taken on board in a serious way and that the rights and needs of marginalized people are included in the development action. Projects are generally expected to respect and uphold human rights principles as enshrined in national constitutions and other laws and policies and their sustainable development goals. Governments have committed to several international and regional frameworks and mechanisms to respond to climate change, COVID-19, natural disasters, peace and security. All of these frameworks recognize the vulnerabilities, exclusion, and marginalization of women and other marginalized groups and the importance of improving JETSI when responding to crisis. JETSI sensitive projects contribute to international, regional, and national development policies, plans, and commitments. Poverty and disability can disadvantage specific groups and can contribute further to their marginalization from development initiatives. Next section focuses on JETSI and climate change and climate sensitive sectors. People's gender, ability, identity, age, etc. are a critical determinant of climate change vulnerability and their capacity to adapt to development responses. It is generally acknowledged that greater vulnerability is experienced by women because they have less power and rights and fewer choices and opportunities than men when it comes to climate change responsive action. The same can be said of other marginalized groups, such as those living with disability. Change affects women and men differently. Gender discriminatory norms limit women's adaptive capacity and prevent them from developing stronger climate resilience. For example, in a community water security project, one of the main users of water is likely to be women, and women are likely to derive some of the key benefits of improved water security. This might be through reduced time in collecting water, reduced risks to women's safety and well-being when collecting water, and reduced incidence of sickness and time caring for sick family members. Risks to water security from climate change and disasters therefore have an uneven burden on women and marginalized groups. Women and other groups' expertise and knowledge in identifying risks and relevant solutions is therefore important to understand and apply to any project. Projects that recognize and address such different needs, priorities, and barriers that face women and men and other marginalized groups provide equal opportunities for them are likely to succeed than those that do not. Examining JETSI in the context of climate change helps to identify how men and women and other vulnerable groups, like persons with disability, will be affected and what interventions are needed to reduce rather than reinforce these inequalities between them. JETSI is a cross-cutting issue regardless of the sector focus. It is important that development projects embed an approach that will empower women and other marginalized groups and build in actions that will contribute to the reduction of inequality. For instance, let us consider the implications on JETSI in the water sector. There is often a clear division of labor between men and women in water resources management. These different roles and responsibility vary within and between Pacific Island countries. Men and women also use water in different ways. Understanding gender differences in use and management of water is important in identifying how climate change will impact on water supply for different groups within the community. For instance, women and girls are disproportionately impacted by water-related disease given gendered aspects of water collection, food preparation, and sanitation. Greater presence of women on water committees and in water management roles increases community health, reduces the time women spend collecting water, reduces conflict, and increases project sustainability. Some progress has been made in the region to try to include women and men and other marginalized groups in water management and sanitation planning and projects. However, a critical issue remains to be addressed is the underrepresentation of women in decision making for water management, development, and productive use. Opportunities for men and women to contribute their skills, knowledge, and capacities in the development of effective water management plans, policies, and programs will ensure interventions are appropriate for local context and deliver positive social economic benefits to all in the community. In many Pacific communities, water committees are established to make such decisions on the management and operation of water systems. It is particularly important that when it comes to decisions on accessing and managing water sources in rural areas, that the views of women, persons with disability in the community, and other marginalized groups are taken on board. Our key points on learning about the key concepts of JETSI. JETSI is a concept that addresses unequal power relations experienced by people on the grounds of their gender, wealth, ability, location, ethnicity, religion, language, and agency, and a combination of these dimensions. JETSI focuses on transforming institutional and structural barriers to rebalance these power relations, reduce disparities, and ensure equal rights and opportunities and respect for all individuals regardless of their social identities. It is critical to look at social inequalities and the exclusion in the broader society to fully understand the concept of JETSI.